Hi, my name is Brittney Majka, and this presentation summarizes my dissertation titled Millennial Motherhood, a holistic single case study on leadership behaviors exhibited in personal best parenting experiences. My research was completed under the mentorship of Dr. Shane Kelly, who guided and supported my work through the research process. My study was informed by three bodies of literature: transformational leadership, modern motherhood, and millennial characteristics. Each area provided essential context for understanding the problem that my research addressed. Transformational leadership literature frames leadership as relational and values driven. It emphasizes the influence of leadership beyond organizational boundaries and formal positions. The literature on modern motherhood highlights the increasing emotional, cognitive, and relational demands that mothers face. Research on millennial characteristics reveals the economic instability, rapid technology change, and evolving social norms that shape the daily life of this generational cohort. My study sits at the intersection of these three bodies of literature, where despite their evolving role in the workforce and family, millennial mothers remain an underexplored population in leadership research. My study used a qualitative approach since the purpose was to explore the lived experiences of millennial mothers. An asset-based approach was important to my study. Mothers often experience self-criticism and external judgment related to parenting practices. My design intentionally honored mothers' strengths and agency rather than reinforcing a perceived deficit. Many participants commented that pausing to acknowledge positive parenting moments felt rare and even indulgent. Their reflections reinforced the value of focusing on personal best experiences. Focusing on behaviors created natural alignment to my theoretical framework and prompted the guiding research question: how do millennial mothers' descriptions of their personal best parenting experiences demonstrate the 5 practices of exemplary leadership? The theoretical framework for my study was the 5 practices of exemplary leadership, developed by Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. I selected this framework for several reasons. First, the model's behavior-based nature aligned well with the qualitative methodology. Additionally, the framework demonstrated longevity and relevance. While first introduced in the Leadership Challenge in 1987, the model has been presented in subsequent editions and remains a foundational framework in leadership literature. Finally, the 5 practices are used in a wide range of contexts, and ongoing scholarship further supports the framework's relevance beyond formal organizational roles, making it appropriate for examining leadership within motherhood. My study used a qualitative, holistic, single case study design. A qualitative approach supported exploration of the mother's lived experiences. A holistic single case design was selected to collectively represent millennial motherhood rather than seeing each mother as an isolated individual case. Each participant contributed a distinct personal story, while all stories together formed a broader integrated case. The case was bound by 2 parameters. The first parameter was the mother's birth year, being between 1981 and 1996, which placed participants in the millennial generation. This boundary offered insight into how cultural and societal influences shaped participants' experiences. The second parameter was the age of the oldest child, ranging from 5 to 12 years old. This boundary focused the study on a specific developmental stage of motherhood characterized by increasing emotional and relational complexity. Multiple sampling strategies were used throughout the research process. Criterion sampling defined and bound the case. Confirming cases ensured that the story submissions contained sufficient depth for analysis. Maximum variation sampling supported the exploration of diverse experiences and context among the participants. Data collection occurred in 2 phases. During the first phase, a questionnaire was distributed to collect personal best parenting stories and resulted in 17 submissions. 12 submissions met the defined criteria, and 10 individuals elected to be considered for follow-up interviews. All 10 eligible submissions provided sufficient stories for deeper analysis, so I identified the stories that demonstrated the highest volume and variety of leadership behaviors. The 5 mothers were invited to 1-hour semi-structured interviews. All 5 agreed and participated in the second phase of data collection. Following the interviews, the first cycle of data analysis was conducted using a priori codes aligned with the theoretical framework. I used descriptive and structural coding to analyze both questionnaire and interview data to identify how leadership behaviors were represented within participants' personal best parenting experiences. Enable others to act emerged as the most prominent leadership category across the data, accounting for approximately 45% of the coded behaviors. Specifically, the a priori code cooperation appeared in all 5 interviews and represented the highest number of unique instances across participants. Overall, the volume and variety of behaviors identified through the first coding cycle demonstrated that leadership practices were present and observable within the context of motherhood. For the second coding cycle, I used reflexive thematic analysis to guide my approach. I intentionally chose an inductive process to keep participant voices central and to surface meaning beyond the theoretical framework. I generated 12 initial codes that captured concepts across the dataset. I reviewed the full set of codes and identified 2 candidate themes. One set of 6 seemed to reflect emotional awareness and emotional regulation. A second set reflected change-oriented behaviors and adaptation. Additionally, a recurring through line emerged that highlighted intrapersonal awareness, interpersonal engagement, and an ongoing redefinition of parenting practices. I evaluated the codes and found that 4 of the original 12 codes did not recur across all participants and were therefore removed. Additionally, 2 codes within each candidate theme were consolidated to reduce conceptual overlap. This refinement resulted in 2 salient themes, each supported by 3 codes. The first theme emphasized the mother's ability to recognize, interpret, and act on emotional information. The second theme emphasized a forward-thinking mindset focused on evaluating inherited behavioral patterns and reshaping parenting practices. The resulting themes were named emotional intelligence and generational change. The first theme that emerged was emotional intelligence, where participants described behaviors rooted in self-awareness, intentional presence, and emotional regulation. Mothers spoke about noticing emotional cues in themselves and their children, pausing before responding, and making deliberate choices about how to engage. These emotional responses were described as opportunities to align their parenting practices with their values. Emotional intelligence aligned most strongly with model the way and enable others to act, positioning the emotional work of parenting as an intentional leadership practice. The second theme that emerged was generational change. Mothers consistently described their parenting decisions as forward-looking and intentionally different from those of previous generations. Participants reflected on inherited parenting norms and described making conscious choices to redefine those patterns in line with a modern understanding of emotional health, communication, and relational boundaries. Generational change aligned closely with inspire a shared vision, enable others to act, and challenge the process. Leadership was expressed through the willingness to disrupt familiar approaches and articulate aspirations for an evolved family culture. When integrated with existing literature, the findings from my study reinforce leadership as a relational process, which aligns with Burns's foundational research on transformational leadership. Additionally, the experiences shared by the participants echo the sentiment of emotional labor found in recent studies. When considered in the context of the millennial generation, mothers described how more flexible workplace arrangements reduced strain and allowed them to be more emotionally available with their children. Additionally, they could establish balanced rhythms for juggling work and home. Some mothers reflected on childhood experiences in which their parents faced different dynamics and expressed confidence in intentionally choosing new approaches that worked better for their family. Across the experiences, emotional intelligence was enacted through awareness, regulation, and intentional choices. The second major theme that emerged from my analysis was generational change. Mothers consistently described parenting as dynamic and collaborative, and emphasized the importance of working in partnership with their children. These descriptions align with concepts of transformational leadership. Recent U.S. statistics show that family sizes are getting smaller, and women are continuing to balance professional careers along with primary household responsibilities. These trends were consistent with the mothers in my study. The comparison between the study participants' experiences and millennial research varied. Technology is a new conundrum for millennial mothers, and participants in my study described their efforts to model positive habits in a way that is consistent with current research. However, the mothers contrasted with family norms often noted in literature. For example, all participants were married and did not refer to divorce, blended families, or non traditional arrangements, such as the father taking on the primary caregiving role. Overall, while the participant family structures reflected traditional arrangements, their values and behaviors reflected more conscientious and child-centered traits that are often associated with the millennial generation. The implications of my study are relevant for millennial mothers and leadership development professionals. For mothers, the findings offer an opportunity to increase awareness and intentionality in their parenting practices. By understanding that their everyday behaviors are a form of leadership, mothers can reframe challenging moments as leadership opportunities. Finally, for populations who may experience added stressors, emotional intelligence practices may help them navigate their most sticky moments. For leadership development professionals, the findings note parenting as a formative leadership context where the five practices have relevance. Services and programs can be provided to parents, and strategic partnerships can be considered as a way to extend access to families. I identified 3 limitations in my study and implemented mitigation strategies for each. First, during initial recruitment, an unexpected federal executive order eliminated many workplace-based support systems for women. This constraint limited my access to a broader range of motherhood experiences, including professional industries, career stages, and work arrangements. I adjusted my recruitment strategy to focus more heavily on existing personal networks and social media platforms. Second, since participation in my study was voluntary, it is possible that my study had an appeal to particular audiences. This risked receiving questionnaire responses from a homogeneous group of participants. To mitigate this, I focused my recruitment on days and times when more mothers were likely to engage as an effort to maximize diversification. Finally, the level of detail provided in personal best parenting responses varied. Differences in narrative depth may have resulted in uneven amounts of data available for analysis. To address this, I included clear instructions with reflection prompts. Overall, I made a concerted effort to encourage others to share the opportunity to participate in my study as a way to help expand the overall network for participant recruitment. To distribute the findings of my research, I plan to leverage an established network of local mothers groups where I will offer resources to help them discover leadership. I hope to explore collaboration opportunities with places that already serve as trusted touch points for families, such as pediatric practices and parent-teacher associations. I will also share the findings with members of the Leadership Challenge Alliance, which is a group of leadership development professionals who are familiar with the five practices. I submitted a proposal to present at their upcoming conference. I will also offer to contribute to their learning series and produce facilitation content that can be used when serving families. Thank you for the opportunity to share about my research.